So from the very basic, is the Nigerian press free?
Well, there is nothing like a free press anywhere in the world, but I think that relatively, knowing what we know about the press in most of Africa, one can say that reasonably the press is free in Nigeria, yes.
Now, one of the many strategies that the press in Nigeria has adopted to, quote-unquote, fight its way to freedom is the enactment of the Freedom of Information Act. Now, let's examine the practicality of this act since it came into existence. What's your view on this?
Well, you know that initially there was the argument about the fact that the act was a federal act, and many of the states didn't initially think that they were bound by the act. So that was an issue. But in my view, I think there's also a problem of understanding in the media of the powers that that act has, entrusted in the hands of journalists. So I'm not sure that we have been faithful enough in using those powers to interrogate government and public officers as much as we should have done.
So is it a case of psychological roadblocks or personal internal moderation by the media, internal censorship, or bureaucratic strategic roadblocks set by the government to prevent use of Freedom of Information Act?
It probably would be a bit of both. I think the people in government see themselves as custodians of that information. And so I don't see a general willingness in them, to make information available as they should to the media. But again, on the part of the media, I'm not exactly sure whether we have challenged, the bureaucracy as much as we should have, using the powers that we have under the Freedom of Information Act. I would like to see the media, challenge government on a daily basis, on the basis of that act, more than we are doing at the moment, not just once in a while.
So why is access largely unchallenged, to use your expression? Is it a case of we have sufficient access to information as Nigerian media, or a case of, like I said before, psychological roadblocks and internal checks from actually accessing this Freedom of Information Act in such a way that you are inspired to try to challenge and pull down these roadblocks?
I do not think that in the media as it is today, that the tendency to be interrogative, the tendency to be investigative is prevalent. And so if you come from that weak position, the question then is, does a journalist care about the Freedom of Information Act when the journalist himself is not intensely seeking out information from, secret files of government? So for me, I think that's the problem. I think the media the media is challenged, not only in Nigeria, but across the world. The business model is being challenged. And I think the media is allowing that to become a mental handicap in the work that we do and in discharging society's expectation on a daily basis.
Aside from self-censorship and self-regulation, which you appear to be talking about as one of the drawbacks for journalism in Nigeria, what are the other challenges that the media essentially itself needs to check before we begin to look on the other side of the table, which will be the government in this case?
Nigeria, at least the kind of democracy that we run in Nigeria, is so partisan. You are either for or you are against. That which we all yearn for and crave for, a situation where parties pursue the national interest, that regardless of whatever party that you are in, there is a commonality, a consensus about what the national interest is. That's missing in Nigeria. And so people tend to just cover up their acts, whether they are those in government or whether they are those in opposition. And that makes it very difficult for information to be readily available. And as I said earlier, the media hasn't done as much as it should to challenge that status quo. In fact, I think one can say that the media did much better in the time of military rule in Nigeria than it's doing today. I think...
How is that so?
We challenged the military. On a constant basis, the media challenge the military. And you're finding today, it's like, oh, the war's won. The military has gone back to the barracks. Today we have, democracy. And so it's like everyone is gone back, resting on their oars. But I think that Nigeria today is challenged. You look at the insecurity all around you. You look at kidnapping happening in parts of the state. You look at the economic, the tepid economic growth we have, the high poverty rate, the high unemployment rate. There is a lot, in my view, on the plate of the media to handle on a daily basis. But I don't think we're doing as much as we should.
Which essentially would, to summarily put, involve stepping out of comfort zone.
Absolutely.